It's 6 p.m. on Wednesday here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Hwang Jie. And these are the top stories we're following at this hour. After the landmine blast at the DMZ, South Korea's Defense Minister vows additional retaliatory acts in addition to broadcasting propaganda messages over the border with North Korea. In the wake of the landmine explosions, all eyes are on what messages President Park Geun-hye will convey in her upcoming Liberation Day speech on Saturday. Plus, China devalues its currency for a second day, sending shockwaves through Asian markets. Korea's finance minister, however, has a positive take of the situation. South Korea's defense minister vowed a stronger response today, saying the country will expand propaganda broadcasts across the border with the North. This after lawmakers lashed out at senior military officers for failing to detect North Korean soldiers who laid landmines and injured 2 South Korean soldiers last week. Our Ji Myung-kil starts us off.
Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-koo vowed stronger retaliatory action against North Korea for the landmine explosion last week.
As of now, we've reinstated a propaganda broadcasting campaign in 2 frontline regions. I believe this is strategically significant in countering North Korea, and I'm considering other measures.
His remarks came during a parliamentary defense committee hearing on Wednesday, during which lawmakers urged the government to deliver a stronger response. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party said the incident and the poor initial response had exposed the military's weaknesses. They said someone must take responsibility for what happened and urged the government to punish those in charge of guard duty.
Now is not the time to comment on who should take responsibility. I believe we must first strengthen our combat readiness and better support the soldiers who are patrolling the frontline regions.
The defense minister said the military still doesn't know when or how the North Korean soldiers entered the southern side of the DMZ, adding that the military cannot monitor every spot along the border. Ruling party lawmakers responded by promising to supply more mine detectors for reconnaissance in so-called blind areas along the border. The committee closed the session by approving up a resolution that condemns North Korea for the incident, which it says is a violation of the armistice. The resolution also calls on the North to apologize and punish those responsible. It will now go to the full assembly for a vote. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
And another response measure to North Korea's attack. South Korea may burn wooden areas at the DMZ. The controlled burns would give troops a clearer view of the border. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
South Korea's defense ministry is considering reinstating an old policy of burning trees and scrubs on the border if they hinder the ability of troops to spot enemy movements. The tactic was used in the past, but was halted in the early 1990s. Fire is the chosen method over cutting, given the number of landmines in the area. The method would only be used in small areas. It would also be undertaken in urgent circumstances.
We will strengthen our border defense so North Korean troops will not be able to cross. We also plan to remove trees and parts of the DMZ to enhance surveillance.
A military official said that if the tree clearing operation gets the green light, the burns will take place in the fall as the land is driest then. In 2001, the 2 Koreas officially agreed to halt burns at the border to better preserve the ecology of the area. Experts say the possible reintroduction of tree and scrub clearing operations indicates the South Korean military wants to take a more offensive approach in dealing with border infiltrations. This comes as the Defense Ministry confirmed this week that North Korean soldiers snuck across the military demarcation line late last month to lay landmines around a gate guarded by South Korean military. North Korea has yet to issue a response about the incident. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And President Park Geun-hye, who had called on Pyongyang to apologize for the incident, highlighted her 2-track policy on the North, offering a preview of what she's expected to say about the regime in her upcoming Liberation Day speech on Saturday. Our Chae Yu-sun has the details.
Speaking to people who made sacrifices for the country's independence on Wednesday, President Park Geun-hye vowed to respond firmly to provocations by Pyongyang. In a reference to North Korea's recent landmine blast in the demilitarized zone, the president said Seoul will ensure such attacks are not repeated while also laying a foundation for peace on the Korean peninsula. President Park's latest remarks indicate that while she has vowed to maintain a strict policy on provocations, she will likely pledge to continue efforts to revive dialogue with the North in her speech on Saturday, marking the 70th anniversary of the peninsula's liberation from Japanese colonial rule. President Park's message for Japan is subject to change based on the content of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's statement on Friday, marking the anniversary of his country's surrender in World War II. The most pressing question is whether Abe will follow in the footsteps of his predecessors. In 1993, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono, under the Miyazawa administration, acknowledged victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery were forced into prostitution. 2 years later, Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama apologized for the imperialist suffering caused by Japan to its Asian neighbors.
일본 정부가 역대 내각의 역사 인식을 확실하게 계승한다는 점을 분명히 함으로써 우리나라를 비롯한 주변 국가의 관계를 새롭게 출발시키려는 성숙한 자세를 보여주었으면 합니다.
Considering the uncertainties in Seoul's relations with both Pyongyang and Tokyo, President Park, rather than making a monumental proposal, is widely expected to maintain the core of her current policies. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Amid mixed outlooks about Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's war anniversary statement this week, Korea's top diplomat is predicting the statement will be a touchstone for Korea-Japan ties. At the opening ceremony for the Center for Japanese Studies in Seoul on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said the so-called Abe statement must uphold Tokyo's past apologies, which would lend momentum to bilateral relations. Japanese media outlets have been giving mixed reports on whether the statement will contain keywords like apology and aggression that were used in a 1995 statement issued by former Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama. Abe is expected to issue his statement on Friday to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Now, demonstrators gathered at a weekly rally ahead of an International Day of Recognition for the comfort women forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. The few survivors continue to demand justice, and they were joined this week by an unusually large crowd of supporters. Our Connie Kim follows this report.
Every Wednesday since 1992, people have gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul to ask Japan to atone for its program of military sexual slavery during World War II. This week's demonstration had special meaning as it also marks International Memorial Day, a day of recognition for the so-called comfort women. Kim Bok-dong was among those at today's rally. A sexual slavery survivor, she is firm on receiving an apology for the atrocities she and those like her endured.
The Japanese government has still not said that it forced young women into sexual slavery, but we're going to fight until the end.
The gathering brought together activists and groups from Korea and overseas. Participants held signs demanding legal compensation and an official apology. They stood determined to draw attention to the comfort women's plight.
I've only read the victims' stories, but coming to the rally and meeting the survivors makes me feel more attached to this issue.
The Japanese government should resolve the issue as soon as possible. Most of the survivors have passed away, and many of those who are still alive are not in good health.
Around 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve the Japanese military during World War II. The event was disrupted when a Korean man in his 80s set himself on fire. But the demonstration resumed after the man was taken to the hospital. Later, students sang songs expressing determination and hope that Korea will not back down until justice is served. A huge banner floated above the crowd with a message asking Japan to apologize and atone for its wrongdoing.
Rain or snow, we have come out here calling on Japan for compensation. If Japan is not deaf or blind, they would have heard our voices. As a human rights activist, I am not going to let this happen again.
The women and supporters of the rally say they'll continue their fight for justice. But unfortunately, time is not on their side, with only 47 registered victims still alive. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
China sets its currency lower again today after its surprise devaluation of the yuan yesterday for the first time in more than 20 years. The decision has driven investors to safer assets. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
China pushed down the value of its currency for a second day, setting another 1.6% lower on Wednesday, after lowering it 1.86% the day before. Tuesday's devaluation was the biggest one-day fall since a massive devaluation in 1994, when China aligned its official and market rates. The devaluations follow weakened data that showed China's exports tumbled 8% last month, hit by weaker demand from Europe, the US and Japan, and that producer prices had entered a fourth year of deflation. The action sent stock markets across the globe spinning, with prices of raw materials and crude oil also dropping sharply. Investors appeared worried that the decision is a sign of Beijing's own growing concern about its sliding economic growth rate and its ability to bolster growth. Demand for safer assets pushed down bond yields in the US and Europe. Beijing's action also weighs heavy on the US Fed and could force it to delay a rate hike previously expected in the second half of the year. For China, the benefits are clear. A cheaper yuan will boost exports by making them less expensive in overseas markets.
I think the present situation won't have a clear impact on the areas of trade and investment. But my personal feeling is that, as in the past, the latest information today that the renminbi has gone down and the adjustment of it, especially downwards, will have a stimulating effect on exports.
And as China is Korea's biggest trading and export partner, stronger demand and growth in Beijing will also benefit Seoul in the long run. Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the government is closely monitoring the foreign exchange market, and the latest devaluation may have positive effects on outbound shipments, as Seoul mostly exports intermediary goods to China, and Beijing ships them out after final production. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
In an apology yesterday, Lotte Group Chairman Shin Dong-bin vowed to increase transparency and restructure the group. A new report shows Korea's fifth largest conglomerate will need more than $2 billion to untangle its complicated web of cross-shareholding arrangements. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
$2.1 billion. That's how much Lotte Group will need to resolve the problems stemming from its complex cross-shareholding structure. The Korean Japan-based conglomerate has 416 cross-shareholding arrangements. Together, they allow the founding family to control the group with a relatively small amount of shares. Market Tracker CEO Score says Lotte will need to clear the stakes held by 6 affiliates in 3 key subsidiaries, Lotte Shopping, Lotte Confectionery, and Lotte Chilsung Beverage, in order to break up the current shareholding structure. The 6 affiliates hold more than $2 billion worth of shares in the other 3 companies. Experts say due to the complex structure, only time will tell when the process will be implemented. The report comes a day after Lotte Group Chairman Shin Dong-bin issued an apology to mitigate the growing negative sentiment against the retail giant amid a bitter succession battle between him and his older brother. Shin vowed to resolve 80% of the problems with the group's cross-shareholding system and pursue a public listing for Lotte Hotel, the de facto holding company of the group's operations in Korea. A separate report shows that less than 10% of Lotte Group's arms are listed, further demonstrating a need for the group to become more transparent. According to industry tracker Jebel.com, only 8 units were listed among 81 Lotte affiliates. That puts Lotte at the bottom of the nation's top 10 conglomerates, where the average is 16%. If Lotte Hotel is listed as promised, it would only raise the percentage of listed group affiliates to 11%, still far below the average of its corporate peers. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's top 3 shipbuilders are planning to undertake massive restructuring as they continue to post huge losses. Industry sources say Hyundai Heavy Industries, Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, and Samsung Heavy Industries are expected to post combined losses of over $5 billion this year. In response, the 3 shipyards are all expected to cut their executive ranks by 30%, while laying off thousands of workers by the end of this year. Daewoo Shipbuilding plans to cut 1,300 workers through voluntary retirement programs, while Samsung Heavy Industries will likely follow suit. Hyundai Heavy Industries already cut 1,300 employees from its earlier of this year. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. More updates coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned and goodbye for now.